All right, let's get started. Hi, everybody. This is Paul Sethi, CEO of REDBOOKS. On behalf of the entire REDBOOKS and Thought Leadership Series team here, it's my pleasure to welcome back many of you and welcome many of you for the first time to the REDBOOKS Thought Leadership Series. The prior event earlier this summer was with Aaron Ross, author of Predictable Revenue. And this afternoon, afternoon here in New York at least, we're proud to bring you Bryan Kreuzberger, founder and CEO of Breakthrough Email. And just before I introduce Bryan, the quick agenda: Bryan's going to present his tips and tricks to you for 30 to 40 minutes with interspersed audience Q&A. So please do use the chat box to ask questions throughout the talk, anything at all that comes to your mind. I'll moderate the inbound questions and push them into the conversation, at least the relevant ones during the talk, and the ones we don't get to during, we'll cover in the 10 to 15-minute Q&A with Bryan immediately afterward. And any other thoughts that you have, please also just type those into the chat box, and one of the team members here will get back to you immediately. All right, the brief on Bryan's company, Breakthrough Email. Breakthrough is the #1 recommended cold emailing system. 11,000 companies globally use Bryan's emailing system to generate and convert leads. And in the last 18 months alone, Breakthrough clients have generated tens of millions of dollars in incremental new business. And while all size companies fit the bill, some of the larger clients include Bank of America, GE, Best Buy, Home Depot, and MasterCard. Bryan lives here in New York with his wife, Kimberly, and 2 children, who I just learned are 2 and 9 months old. He's been featured in the New York Times, and Forbes hails him as one of the top 40 sales experts. And a few quick fun facts on Bryan: he's been cage diving with a great white in South Africa. His family immigrated to America in 1631. And Bryan was an All-American swimmer at the University of Arizona and is now learning how to kite surf. All right, without further ado, take it away, Renaissance man, Bryan.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I'm excited to talk to everybody today about cold emailing. And this group is near and dear. If you're here, I was in your position. I was an ad salesperson in New York City, and was constantly trying to get in touch with brands and agencies and get leads and get meetings. So I'm intimately aware of just how competitive the marketplace is and how many different offerings there are for people trying to get revenue dollars. But there's 2 questions that I want to get everyone's input on as we get started, and as you guys think about this, which is so the first 2 questions are, what company do you want to meet with, and how much would that client be worth to you, right? Or how much would that client be worth to your company? So, as we go through this cold emailing exercise, I want you to think of a company that you want to get in front of, and if you were able to get in front of that company, what's the potential value, for you or for your company in dollars? And everybody should have a chat screen, and I'd like to just get some feedback from everybody listening, the type of company that you're targeting and the dollar amount. That also helps me put it in context for you guys as we talk about some of the email templates and the email system to go through. But Paul, if you can see some of the chat responses, or I guess in the questions area as they come through.
Yeah, there are a couple coming in already, and I'll start reading them out. So the first one was Coca-Cola, and they say $100,000. People seem to have quantified. There's actually another Coca-Cola. Someone says an architect firm, $20,000 to $30,000. Someone said Target, $500,000. Others are saying agencies, chambers, universities, anywhere from $2,500 to $20,000. Xbox, PlayStation, Dick's Sporting Goods, anywhere from $100,000 to $500,000. Rogers Canada, production companies, ad companies, consumer goods companies. It's running the gamut. I can keep going.
So it sounds like brands and agencies, at least from the initial $20,000 to $500,000. So a good enterprise type deal, which is really in the sweet spot of cold emailing. So as we go, I want to advance the slide. All right. So as we go through this, I'll tell you just my kind of quick story of what got me here. As you know, as a swimmer, I started working. I went into debt when I started my own company. I moved to New York City, and I was always in sales. I always had new startup companies. I was always trying to get a meeting, to get a lead. I had no contacts. I was, in my early 20s, and I hated cold calling. I'd done cold calling for years, and I always kind of felt it was like the part of my job that I hated. So I was always just looking for a better way. And it wasn't until I discovered email, and this is probably like 7 or 8 years ago, that everything changed for me. And I was working for a venture-backed startup in New York City, and calling on agencies and just getting really frustrated. And I finally just said, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to call the client, or call on the clients, or email the client. And that's really the point where everything changed, because I was now talking to the end decision makers. Up until the point where as a sales rep, I'm now making $100,000 in a month. But it wasn't until I really discovered the email and and how to craft the email, and literally I wrote 15,000 individual emails to develop the system. So there's there's a lot of thought that goes into this. Some of the companies that you mentioned, that that this worked on is Best Buy, Bank of America, GE, McDonald's. There's a number of others, MasterCard, but pretty much anything that you guys were mentioning, agencies or brands, or all this system can work for you. And and more importantly, now it's working for everybody else, and they're not having to cold call. But and if anybody has any questions along the way, put them in there. Paul can interject and kind of stop me at any point. But the way I look at sales, I look at it from 2 perspectives, or like it's a 2-step process. There's opening the sale, and then there's closing the sale. And Gary Benson Vega, who is a famous copywriter, that's how he looked at copywriting or selling. And it's really a different skill set between the two, right? Opening the sale, you can use outbound strategies, cold emailing, cold calling. You can use inbound strategies, content marketing, SEO, advertising, whatever it may be, right? But it gets you to the meeting. And then closing the sale, once you get in the meeting, and following up and presentations and pitching and asking questions and finding a budget and qualifying them, everything else is another step. And today we're only going to be talking about opening the sale, which is getting the meeting. The options, right? The normal option is to cold call. And I was in Southern California, my first job out of college, working for this Oracle consulting firms, like this small company, and my job was to cold call every day. And I was calling on directors of IT and VPs of IT and pretty much interrupting their day, right? Like they're in the middle of doing something else, and I'm there, calling them, and I ended up getting pretty good at it. But the challenge for me was people just didn't pick up, right? Like they're in the middle of something else. I'm interrupting them. I could get past the gatekeeper. I could leave voicemails, but I just found that the voicemails people wouldn't return, and I just had the worst time when that was my day, right? Like my whole day was interrupting people who didn't want to talk to me, and when it comes to selling, especially when you start developing more business, this is the last thing you want to do. And it's very difficult also for you to delegate this to somebody else, maybe like an intern or an assistant, because they're going to stumble over their words. And I just, I never felt very comfortable, doing it. But when it comes to like getting the meeting, before we even get to cold emailing, there's some fundamentals that work for, for any organization. But whether you're looking to go after some sort of smaller organization, 20 to 100 people, or a larger company, which it sounds like most people are, thousands of people. If you're trying to go after Coca-Cola, the marketing people at Coke, I mean, how many different marketing people are there? I mean, there's got to be at least a couple hundred. Channel marketing, digital, online, all the different countries, all the different languages, the different products, Coke, Diet Coke, all the agency people, the creative people. I mean, there's so many different people that you could pitch your product to. And when I was out there, I would, I'd go on 10 meetings with different people at the organization just trying to find the right person for me to talk to who actually could pull the trigger on something. And the challenge that I always had, when I went in was I got to an agency would say, hey, we're going to, you're on one of the plans, and then later on they'd say, hey, you weren't approved. And, your plan wasn't approved. And this happened to me a couple times, and what I finally asked was like, listen, was I even presented as far as being on the plan? What did the client think? And the group of the agencies, like, they never presented it. And if they do, they're not going to present it for very long. So maybe only a couple minutes. So I had spent 9 months taking an RFP that they gave to me minutes before, 2 days before, please fill out, which takes hours. And then I would follow up, and they're not responding or not on the plan. So the initial key that I found was you got to get to the right decision maker, and you got to get to the final decision maker, and that's typically very hard, especially to find the right people. But we're going to talk about how in one step, in one email, you can get leverage into an organization, get the meeting with the right person, get them to respond, have other people delegate for you, and literally it's pretty simple when you think about it, as as I explained it to you, but it took me a long time to figure out. Paul, do we have any questions? Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, one is, and I think you're starting to go in that direction, is how does the strategy, and this is Greg asking, how does the strategy work for larger deals greater than $1 million? And then another one, Mark's asking, what do you think about prospecting, just as you're going through the talk, prospecting in similar ways on LinkedIn via InMail?
Yeah, so I think LinkedIn is great. I don't cover LinkedIn as much, and I know a couple experts on it. Linked Selling, Josh Turner, is really good, and also I think it might be like Linked Strategies, Nate Kievman. So those are the two guys that I'd recommend taking a look at it. But LinkedIn absolutely should be one of the tools in your arsenal, right?
And I think he was asking more specifically about InMail versus email and cold reaching out with InMail credits.
Well, let me ask you, do you get a lot of people prospecting you in LinkedIn?
I ignore every single one.
Okay. So, and do they go into your email account?
I actually have them set up so they do, but not to throw out something that has nothing to do with us, but I use SaneBox, which is great. I don't know the folks at SaneBox, but they make a great product, and so it does what Google Gmail filtering does, and it filters everything out as I need it to. I happen to have LinkedIn coming in because those who do reach out to me that I do know, I do respond to.
Right. So you respond to who you know, you don't respond to who you don't know.
Correct.
And it's already filtered. Like for myself, I don't really check LinkedIn very often. And at one point I did have all the emails coming to me, and it was just like I was bombarded by it and had to figure out how to turn off all alerts within LinkedIn. The strategies in the communication and the fundamentals, whether it's in LinkedIn or in email, are going to be the same. But I think for the purposes of today, let's get into, and it's more like fundamental psychology than the nuances, and we can talk more at the end, especially when we take questions. Email isn't perfect, right? And we can look at a few of the issues that you're going to have with email as it is, typically done. And the first issue is people are bombarded with lots of messages, right? So you get SaneBox, and I have Gmail filters, and you have all these rules to essentially limit a lot of the junk that you're getting. So it's a really crowded marketplace. People aren't reading your email. There's systems to look at that you can use to find out if they're reading or not, which we can talk about. People aren't responding to your email, and then you don't know what happened. And we can talk about 2 and 4, but ultimately, if I send an email, I want a response, and that's the outcome that I'm after. And really, within an outcome, from there, I want a meeting, and I want to meet with somebody. So the email that I'm going to show you guys, an email template that we work with people through our cold emailing system, typically gets about an 80% response from the company. And there's a lot more thought put into the individual email. Plus, there's the 15,000 emails that I use to test it. And since we put in a lot more effort versus how it's normally done, which is kind of copy and paste and blast out and kind of cross your fingers, we get many more responses because we put a lot more effort and the right effort into the responses. But the normal mistakes that most salespeople are making is, the first one is they write all about themselves. Hi, my name is Bryan Kreuzberger. I'm the founder of Breakthrough Email. I thought, you should meet with me, and blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you about my company. The problem with that is it's all about me. It's not about the reader, right? The reader, it has to be about, the opportunities for the other person and not necessarily let me tell you about me. The second is people are vague and really being deliberate and let me tell you how I can help you, right? Like what is the end benefit of working with my company or hiring our ad technology or using our, doing a media buy on our property? What are those key benefits for you, for your company, for, the advertiser who's looking for customers? The third is they write in really long sentences, and the sentences are hard to read. I originally had that was like they write in long sentences that are hard to read, and I realized even as I wrote that it needs to be two separate sentences because we want to make it very easy for the reader who's like a VP, group director, CMO level type person who's on their iPhone, on their phone. We want to make this really easy for them to read and respond and just make it really, really clear. The fourth is the pitch is ineffective. At some point, you're going to have to explain, what it is you do and how you can help them. And most people, when they start communicating that, it's just not effective. They'll treat a company like one person is that company versus looking at it like, okay, there's lots of different people in this organization that I could work with. Let me find the right person. I've also found that a lot of people will want to send people to their website versus dealing with them one-on-one. And I found once, at least the companies that I worked at, the website didn't necessarily reflect what the proper messaging was for that person. And I would rather have them talk to me for an initial conversation than going to my website and getting confused. And then the last one, which is mainly due to technology, is you now have a system like TownApp or BuzzBuilder, or you're using HubSpot Signals, or all these systems that are out there that you can send emails, and now you're just sending more bad emails to people, and you're wasting good contacts. And Paul, if there's any questions on this?
Yeah, there is one, and he actually requested to have it saved to the end, but I thought it was actually an interesting one considering there are mistakes and then there's some really powerful tools. When's the use of humor appropriate to an unknown audience?
Ask the person if that everyone finds them funny. Like if if you have some sort of secret power where you're just a really funny person and everyone thinks you're funny, you could maybe use a little light humor if you're having success with it. I think at this point it's the wrong question to ask because we need to look a little bit more at the strategy and understand the psychology of the person who's looking at your email. Because ultimately they're busy. They're in the middle of the day. They're doing, this person who at Coca-Cola who you want to reach is doing something right now. They have a big job. They have people reporting to them, and it's great if you want to send something funny to them, but ultimately, why do they care? Right? Like let's get to the point and let's give them an opportunity. This is
one
something
individual, and I think you might be getting to it, but one individual said, why didn't we talk about the subject line first?
Yeah, so that's we'll get to the subject line. You have to understand the ecosystem before you get to the subject line, and there's actually several steps before you get to a subject line. Subject line's like your headline, but there's a lot more strategy to understand the the environment that you're going into, and they'll see, just wait 5 minutes and you'll see the subject and how it all works together. So this is something called the above the rim tactic, and really, I'm over there on the left, and I was trying to get the director of marketing. I was typically going to the agency. They would delegate me down to kind of a lower level planner, and I would essentially sit there, with a meeting, or like a bunch of people would, say they're going to go on the meeting, and then they show up late, and I had this just, short conversation with somebody who was like 2 years out of college, who obviously isn't a decision maker. And I had limited time in the day, and I was looking to really close some business, and I had some aggressive numbers that our VCs want us to get to. And I just kind of realized after 6 or 9 months, like, this is just, a pursuit, and, it's just a waste of my time, and like just a pursuit of frustration. So my end goal was always to get to the director of marketing, because that would be like, say, the person who would approve the plan, who was interfacing with the agency and we were new media. We were a company called Jingle Networks and another company called Voodoovox. It was audio ads on voice phone calls, and this is pre-iPhone, right? So it's like new media. And what I found was that if my goal was to get this director of marketing, rather than writing the people below him, or writing him or her, and then at, say, a director of marketing at Coke, and then getting delegated down to the agency, why don't I write to and contact, let's see, actually, all right, so I'm actually going to save, before I get there, I'll talk about Best Buy and how I came across this. But I was in New York City. It was after work. I was with my friends. We were out, and as typical New Yorkers, we're always checking our BlackBerry or iPhone. And I was looking at my iPhone. I was looking at my emails, and I got this email back from Best Buy, and it was like, Bryan, thank you so much for writing us. We're so interested in in what you're offering. We see that there's multiple areas at Best Buy that we might be able to leverage your services. I'll be your point of contact. There's a weekly marketing call that all the people at Best Buy from around the country all join. We'd love it if you could come in and present. If not, or in parallel, if you're able to make it out to Minneapolis at any time, we'd love to have you come in and meet in person. I'll be your point of contact. Let me know, if you can talk. And I'm looking at this email, and I look at the CC, like who CC'd on this email, and there's 7 different individuals at Best Buy CC'd. And I'm just kind of floored, because I'm thinking, the normal email I get is like, cease and desist, please unsubscribe, stop writing me. And what I had done differently in that email was I had written at a much higher level than I normally write to. And this is, it's just pretty much like a negotiation tactic. Like, you ask for more than you actually want. So if I wanted to reach the director of marketing, rather than writing the director of marketing and then getting delegated down, I would write to the CMO, and I would write to the, the VP of advertising at Coke, or say the person in charge of digital advertising, and even just picking the right people is a really important step that we talk about more in the system, and the VP of marketing and the director of marketing. So I'd write to 4 people. I wrote to 4 people, and what happened was, the VP of marketing delegated down to the director of marketing. Director of marketing now, if you understand, any corporate environment, the C-level, the VPs, the CEOs, the management, part of their job is delegating other people to do the work. I mean, that's a lot of their job. So let's use something that's already happening in any company that you guys are trying to reach, which is management delegates this to other people, and use that to our advantage. The other advantage is that management knows who the right people are within the organization. Because many times I get in, I say, okay, I know who the guy is, the guy in charge of social media. That's going to be the decision maker. And then I go there, I meet with them, and a year later realize, hey, the social media guy has zero budget. He's just kind of looking at new opportunities and doing, a bunch of stuff with social media. He's not the guy. It's really this other person who handles the budget and has the money. So let the organization, the company, tell you who the right person is. And then the third element for any business is the person below the management person, the person that was delegated, part of their job is to kind of cover their butt. It's to do a good job in the eyes of the other people in the organization. So if you guys are trying to reach Coke, there's 1,000 other sellers. There's, say, a couple hundred on this call that are interested in Coke, but there's 1,000 more that are interested in reaching Coke too. So you have to be a lot better than everybody else who's out there, and you have to have a lot, just a much tighter strategy. Now, this is just one of the tactics that we talk about.
There are a couple of clarifying questions that people have, Brian. One is the content the same for the 3 emails? And I think let's table that one because it looks like you're about to get to content. But just focus on the above the rim tactic. Would all 4 people be on the same email? And when you write your email to all 4, do you BCC or CC?
Yeah, they're all good questions, and we'll get to all of those. So what you're doing is you're actually going to write 4 different emails to 4 different people, not BC, not CC. It doesn't work. It makes it too easy for them to respond and say, hey, not interested. Because I also found that the VP of advertising would say it's this one person, in Atlanta, and the VP of marketing would say it's the other person out in California. So I've gotten, especially in these large organizations, I've gotten meetings and contracts from different groups within the organization. And you take Coke, right? Like any one of the brands within Coke could be a decision maker. And if you have some sort of new media, the digital side, the social side, you could find money from a lot of different places. So 4 different emails, 4 different people. I like to look at it, this email as kind of a 3 acts, right? There's the introduction, there's the pitch in the middle, and then there's the closing. And, let me just kind of break this down for you guys. So first off, we have to be really clear what our purpose is, right? So what is the subject of the email? The subject line that, we typically use for this email is appropriate person, right? I'm writing to find the appropriate person at Coke to talk to. So literally in the first sentence, because if you think about an iPhone, this is what they see, right? Maybe they don't see the last sentence, but they see probably, I don't know how many characters it is, but maybe 100 characters or 150 characters, something like that, first couple lines. They're going to see more than just your subject line. They're also going to see your name. So don't waste the first sentence with my name is Bryan Kreuzberger. They already know your name. And it's a surefire sign of just kind of showing how green you are. There was a sales trainer who said, that typically the type of people that you meet with represents kind of the level you are personally. So if you're kind of starting out, you start out with other people. If you're starting out and you're trying to reach a CMO, they're probably not going to meet with you. But this first sentence, I'm writing in hopes of finding the appropriate person who handles something. In my case, I was going after Best Buy. It was a Hispanic campaign, so I said multicultural media. Now, within Best Buy multicultural media, there's still 5 or 10 people at Best Buy that could handle that. And this is a very targeted email. I also wrote to person X, person Y, person Z, which is essentially saying I also wrote to the CMO, the VP of marketing, and the VP of advertising. I include their names. It's going to take you guys extra work, but this is absolutely critical. And then if it makes sense to talk, let me know how your calendar looks. and we'll talk about even like word choice there. Any questions before we go to the pitch?
No, I think you're all good right now.
All right. All right. So let's go to the pitch. The pitch, to be able to write an effective pitch, is an art in itself. It's like part art, part science, and we don't have enough time to talk to everybody. This is not a normal elevator pitch. This is kind of a different technique, but within the pitch, we'll look at some of the elements. But the first sentence is very important. So VoodooVox helps increase the revenues of Fortune 500 companies by marketing to Hispanics. So within that email, and this is actually the email that I had sent. My company helps do something, right? So my company helps increase revenue. Like all these marketers are trying to increase revenue. They're trying to find more customers. They're trying to find a better way to market or better way to measure media or whatever. So you have to get really clear on like what are the end, spell out the benefits. I know that reach is important to them. I know a lot of stuff, and I've done a bunch of research even in like Google News. And if we look at, say, at the end of this, they probably don't know your company, but they probably know some of the other companies that you work with. So, in this case, this is actually, let's see. Yeah, so this was an email to McDonald's. So, I referenced Burger King, P&G, and Chili's. So it's very important to get the association of the other companies that you work with. Many times it's much more important than the name of your company, because unless you're Facebook or LinkedIn or Google, they probably haven't heard of you. And but they have heard of like the competitors or the companies that you work with. So you absolutely want to include that. There's a whole thing called the deep sea fishing technique, which we found that rather than coming up with like 1 or 2 benefits, you want 4 or 5 different benefits in there. And every word in this email has to have a purpose. So now there's a lot more to that, and there's, but like looking at the call to action, if you're the appropriate person to speak with, what does your calendar look like? If not, who do you recommend I talk to? So, and then your signature. And I was always shocked that people would like send emails without like a very buttoned up signature. But in this example, using the word calendar actually increased response rate by 35% versus schedule. And what we found is if you ask somebody like, Paul, like, how does your schedule look right now?
No idea.
Well, like, how does your
I'll have to go check my calendar.
Right. Well, how does your calendar look?
It's packed. I'm busy.
Yeah, but like, are you scheduled out for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 6 weeks? Like, how many weeks are you typically scheduled out?
Oh, you're specifically asking me? Probably a week to 2 weeks.
Okay, so me too. I'm kind of scheduled out like 2 weeks, but 3 or 4 weeks out, I'm pretty open, right? So, but my schedule is kind of more of a to-do mindset, like today, and days and hours, where your calendar is weeks and months. So rather than like trying to say, how does next Tuesday at 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. or whatever, because again, this is like a VP, a C-level, somebody who is really busy, really scheduled out, and why would I want to look like desperate too, right? Like, can you talk tomorrow? Like, no, they can't talk tomorrow. They're busy with other stuff. And there's a lot of other people. So you have to take all these different nuances into consideration. And then at the end, it's like, if not, who do you recommend I talk to? Right? So for the person that asked, well, let's talk about subject lines. The subject line is just part of the whole recipe, right? And this email works well because it all works together, right? So first, if we go back to so this email, it's a kind of a longer email. A lot of other people that talk about emails, if you guys Google like cold email templates on Google, they'll say something like, well, don't say a lot, just say like, a couple sentences. And that's because they don't know what to say, right? So less is more, if you don't know what to say. And so you just say, a couple sentences. But the next thing they're going to ask you is, well, tell me about what you do, right? Or, can you send me a media kit? And that is like death to you because you're having the meeting without being there, right? And like, for everybody out there, I'm curious, how many of you love your media kits and your media kits like sell your stuff? I'm curious to see what Paul sees, like if you like your media kit and if you found that media kits are effective to like sell your services.
I'm seeing hate them, never, thumbs down. Basically, it's all reinforcing your point.
Yeah.
One person just said, I love ours, but most people are saying death, our media kits suck, they confuse people, terrible. So yeah, you get the idea.
Well, so the person who says they love it, I'd love to see it. Just email me, brian@breakthroughemail.com. I'd love to see like your awesome media kit. It's Brian with a Y. So you're going to get response, and then within that, there's say a category of 5 different responses, right? Like one is, hey, talk to this guy. He's the right person. Then there's a whole strategy on like what you do to get that referral and leverage that referral to the meeting. And it's really only a couple sentences that all you have to send. And but then the other responses are, hey, can you send me some information, right? So that's kind of like, I'm not willing to meet with you, but I'm willing to look at it. And for those of you guys who send the information, now you're in the follow-up death spiral or the follow-up void. Hey, did you get it? What do you think? Does it make sense to talk? Do you want to talk? And you lose all leverage. So the key to this email is you want to say enough for them to say yes, but not enough for them to say no. And other responses are, not at this time, like down the road. What are the other responses? I'm trying to think. I mean, it's like not interested at this time, and there's just a variety of different traps that you're going to get into, and we codified like every single potential response that somebody has. And there's an email, for that, and back and forth. The other area, for everybody here, definitely write this one down. This is like follow-up. So whether you just got out of a meeting, you thought it went well, you sent them a proposal, you sent them your deck, whatever. Now you're following up, and now they're not responding. You're kind of asking yourself, like what happened. So this is another one of the templates in our program. It's called the permission to close your file email. So essentially how you break this down, so I'm writing to follow up on the email I sent 2 weeks ago. I would just say I'm writing to follow up on whatever the communication was that you had, and I always customize it. We're in the process of closing files for the quarter. You can say you're closing files for the month, the year, whatever it is. Typically when I haven't heard from a customer after a few months, it means they're either really busy or aren't interested. If you aren't interested, do I have permission to close your file? So I'm not making them wrong for not responding, and that's really important. So in the following up is actually an error and a mistake, which we could talk about in the meeting, but you don't want to make them wrong. But you do want to give them an out, and I do know that everyone's really busy. But the key here is I'm walking away. Right? Like rather than, hey, I'm just checking in, I just wanted to touch base, like these just terrible emails that people write to decision makers, and it's really kind of like a subservient role to the decision maker, like your time's not valuable, right? Like they will let you just keep chasing them, or I have a buddy from Twitter that we call it politely stalking them. If you aren't still interested, what do you recommend as the next step? Thanks for your help. And write this email down. 8 out of 10 people who never respond to your emails will respond to this email. And this is just one of those magic emails that we've used that we tried to beat it, and like we just can't beat the response. Any other questions so far?
Yeah, so there are a couple pertaining specifically to this, and then there are a couple from a few slides prior. How much time would you recommend you give someone to respond to the initial email before you send a follow-up like this?
Well, okay, so that's not the follow-up I would send as like a second email. Why don't we save these? Why don't we go through a couple more slides, and then we can go to the questions and just cover questions.
Perfect.
Is that all right?
Yep. Perfect.
All right, cool. How do I know if they open up my email? So this is a whole other space of companies that you guys can use, you may or may not be familiar with, to get people to to have either be able to delegate it to a system, or to get more input as far as like what your sales team, like if you're a sales manager, like what people are sending, what emails people are responding to, and and being able to also understand like are they opening it, are they forwarding it, are they like what are they doing? So BuzzBuilder and ToutApp and Yesware are all like great services that do that. HubSpot just came out with something called Signals. This is a space I wish existed 7 years ago when I was in ad sales. But they've kind of realized that salespeople need more for email. Followup.cc is another service, and there's a bunch more that like you can time when you send it, and do a bunch of different stuff. Our company, we do the online training, so we have a cold emailing system that you can look into. We also have an actual sales training, like what do you do when you get the meeting. We'll do in-person training. I do a lot of stuff in New York just because I'm in New York. And and the other thing that we do is we actually do this for companies. So on a performance basis, and just like we'll do it, we'll send it. You just pay for the appointments that you go on, and and I can kind of share like how people can hear about that too. If people want the template, they can sign up, subscribe to our email list. In the first email, just go to breakthroughemail.com. You can download the templates.
So we have there are a fair number of questions.
Okay. And also, if anybody's interested in like the done for you for their company, you just breakthroughemail.com/leads, and you can apply or have your company apply for that. But yeah, let's go to the questions, and we can also take somebody live if you want to take somebody live too. It's up to you.
All right, sounds good. So I'll go through the ones that we have in the queue, and then we could open up the lines from there.
Okay. And they just have to raise their hand. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. So someone who has a smaller company, they have 2 people doing outbound, does it make sense for the emails, the above the rim tactic emails, to come from the email address of the CEO to get to the higher level of contact? Or is it okay for it to come from the SDRs or outbound reps?
Yeah, I'd say it's fine to come from the reps, but I would like gravitate the title of the person. Like I wouldn't have the title be like inside sales rep, right? Writing to a CMO.
Yeah.
I like when I worked for a small company, nobody cared about titles. I would just say director of sales.
Got it.
And no one really knew what that meant, but it sounded like it had a little credibility behind it. So I wouldn't want it to hurt the person if there's like a real mismatch between who you're writing to and what your title is.
That sounds good. Next question is, when are bullet points appropriate to call out the main value prop in those emails?
I kind of think it's the wrong question, right? So the real question is like, how do I develop the right value proposition? Now the bullet points and how you communicate it. Now I want it to be easy to read, and I want it to have like a flow. And sometimes we use bullet points, or we'll anchor something like typically the 4 ways that people work with us are number 1, number 2, like so they know that this thing is going to end. But you really have to get into what is it you're going to say to this person that's going to present an opportunity for them. Like, and within an instant, they're going to get it.
That makes sense. Wes Nays is asking, is it okay to send a link to or an explainer video? Never. No, don't include links in email.
No links.
Okay.
No links.
No links.
All right. It's just if it's not worth your time to meet with them, you probably shouldn't be writing them.
And then there's a follow-up from. There's a kind of a follow-up from Scott saying that is it okay to, if they ask for links or media kits, once they respond to you, is it okay to send it to them or be persistent about meeting with them?
So I always want to acknowledge that I hear them, right? So this is an email like in the system. If they say, hey, Bryan, can you send me a media kit? I would say, you know what, I don't have a media kit, but I'm happy to send you any information you want to see. What kind of information would you like to see? Because really what they're doing is they're blowing you off. I'd say probably 10 to 20% of people who ask for a media kit will actually take a meeting with you. They're not willing to commit to the time to talk to you. And mostly that's a problem because your email pitch was weak. Right? Because the email has to convey the, what's in it for them really quickly. And remember, like if you're writing 4 different people, you have to speak to 4 different audiences. Maybe it's more important to speak to the CMO who's going to delegate it down than, the director of advertising who, his viewpoint of the business is different. And you have to think about like what's the difference between writing to the individual, like the person, versus like the benefits of the company. So there's don't just like say, and don't talk about ROI and don't talk about how you're a SaaS service because like for ROI they have to understand like it's like them risking their time and energy to maybe make some sort of investment or savings for the company. Like the person doesn't care that you're writing, and when it comes to like say SaaS, that's just like VC speak where it's just telling them about you, nothing to do with what's in it for them.
Got it. Someone else is asking, how much time would you recommend giving them to respond to the first few emails? So how much time is it between the initial one and the first follow-up?
In our cold emailing system, it's a 4-email sequence, and I typically give people a week. I like to give people some space. I get people are busy, and I also get that my decision makers could be gone in like South America for a week or something. So, and since it's cold, it's obviously not urgent. But I also want to show that I'm persistent. And for me, it ended up just being like I would send an email in the Outlook, and I would just put a little calendar reminder for the next week, like, hey, if I don't hear a response, like write these guys. And but now you can actually schedule all this stuff, which is nice.
Someone else is asking, how do you scale the personalized emails? What's the best way to make the most of my time in doing this?
So it's a good question. It's the wrong question right now, right? Because their email, whatever they're going to put together, their pitch is not going to be like, they're going to waste the opportunity, right? So then it's kind of like like let me just send more bad content and not get a response, because there's a difference between the emails of people who have like really gone through the system and interviewed their customers, and understand the language, understand the phrases, and like the difference is say 10-20%, but that 10-20% is the difference between people who get the meetings and not. Now once you start getting meetings and have the right content, then scale it up, right? And then when you're ready to scale it, you can either delegate it to companies like us, you can, or just use systems, or hire interns underneath you, or essentially just have somebody else do it. That's how you scale it.
Got it. That makes sense.
But it's, don't scale it yet, because you're just going to kind of shoot yourself in the foot. And what shooting yourself in the foot looks like is, hey, can you send me a media kit? I don't understand what you do. I'm not interested. Please unsubscribe. It's all the responses that you're getting or not getting because of the wasted effort. Versus if you spent 10 hours, a couple days to develop the right emails or the right content, then then for the other 360 days out of the year, you're going to be getting responses.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another question is twofold related to the follow-up email. Should the follow-up email be a reply all to the initial email, meaning the body of the initial email would still reside beneath it? And what should the content of the follow-up email be? They're kind of asking that you skip kind of from the first email to the permission to close email. What's kind of the in-between?
Yeah, so there's kind of too much to go through, in the different follow-up emails. The premise is, you're replying back. Your outcome is that you're trying to, find the right person to talk to, and so that's. But what we have found is that within the first email to say the last email, we'll probably get 65, 70% of responses out of say the 80% from the second, third, and fourth email. And typically what it is it's the management responding saying, kind of like, I'm surprised nobody responded to this. Here's your guy to talk to.
That's great. That's brilliant. And just quickly, should the follow-up emails include the bodies of the initial emails or no?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So there's kind of
a
RE before the subject line.
Yes.
Okay.
But and again, it's like the subject line isn't as important as the content. And just making sure that the content is right, and really the follow-up, kind of doesn't matter unless the pitch is right. Because like the case of Best Buy, I had gone in, I'd looked at the news, I knew that they were doing a program for recruiting Hispanic employees. And I also knew that they were trying to do stuff with mobile and couponing and redemptions. And there's one other thing that I kind of knew as well. And guess what was in my pitch? It's like how we have this large group of Hispanics that they can reach, and they can find employees, and they can, because the marketing department was actually doing that. So there's a bunch of, now before we even get to the email, like what's in the system, the first step is actually say it's the second step. The second step is the research that that you can do, that you can find out really qualified, good information, and obviously, like, you use REDBOOKS, right? Like, you use those articles that the VP of Marketing at Coke is saying about what they're doing, what they're trying to do, so you can kind of find intent. And then when you write them, that's part of your messaging on how you can help further that. Now, there's challenges to that because by the time something has been out in the news, it happened 6 to 9 months ago, where they started about it, and now when you go there and you think, okay, well, this is what the guy cares about, it's like, no, like for next year, which is where I'm planning out, like this is the new direction. But at least it gives you something better since you're going in cold. And then the step before that is making sure you're writing the right companies. Like there's a whole technique into finding the company that wants to work with you, that's going to spend a lot of money, that's more likely going to want to work with you versus all the other companies. Like our last, one of our companies that we did a lot of business with was Western Union, and it took me about 6 months to 9 months, since it was a brand new product, to figure out who was the right type of company to work with us, because we were doing a bunch of stuff with prepaid calling cards. And but once they started to help me develop the product and the offering, because the customers developed it, not like my marketing department, You know, we worked with Bank of America, and we worked with MoneyGram, and we worked with MasterCard, and all these other types of companies, and you start speaking the language, you know, for those companies. So every pitch should be fundamentally different, depending on who you write to. It's a lot more work, and it's not what people want to hear, but it's the difference between getting the result and the outcome and not.
That sounds great. And another question is, should I ever put anything, and I'm guessing the answer is no based upon past responses, should I ever put anything in bold font or underline words for emphasis? I think it comes across as too salesy, but I also want the recipient to pay attention.
My rule of thumb is I would like close my eyes and I would imagine that I was the other person. And I'd imagine like what's going on in their day, right? So say it's a VP of marketing at Coke. They're in Atlanta. They live in the suburbs. They commute in. They've been there for 4 or 5 years. They're busy. All these people are reporting to them. They've got these big budgets. The agency's reporting into them. And now this email comes across my, my iPhone or my computer. What's my reaction to it? Right? So if it looks professional and if it looks, and you bold a couple things, that's fine. But I typically, it's more about the content, and it's more about the phrases that you need to use that the client would respond to, and like kind of getting in their brain as far as like, how have you helped other companies and how could you help Coke? Then like, is it bullet points or is it bold or is it, something else?
And I guess the follow-up to that is, does the length of the email matter, and how do you get them to read the entire value prop portion of the email? So
I get them to read the value prop because I know how they're thinking, or I have a very good guess on kind of where they're at, right? Like, so people buy for 3 reasons. They buy. Do you know what the reasons are, Paul?
I don't. I'm hanging on your every word.
What do you think they are?
They want to buy from people they like. That's kind of the one I commonly hear.
I disagree.
Is that right? Okay, so then I'm not even going to go into a second and third.
No, keep going. Why don't you brainstorm and then I'll do it.
I don't have good answers. I'm going to let you jump in.
So the Sandler Sales Institute, which is a great sales training I took years ago, they said that people buy because they're in pain. And I kind of further define that where, like expert copywriters will talk about that people are, they're either fearful of something, that they are either like they desire something, right? And it could be, or it's something that they're frustrated with. And what I found that moved the needle the most is that when people bought, it was in the B2B environment, in media sales, is because they were frustrated in tandem with what they desired. And most of the time they desired something because they were frustrated with something else. Right? So if like we did a couple $1 million with Western Union, they were frustrated because they had all these different corridors, like they need to reach Dominican Republic people in the U.S. and talk about remittance. They couldn't buy Hispanic media, like to just target Dominicans. It was, they were like literally buying the Dominican parade in New York City. And these guys had these budgets and there's this big corridor and they had no way to do it. So they desired something else, but they were really frustrated with what was in the market. And, and we could just target, like, say, just Dominicans who, were calling their mother or whatever. So I forgot what the original question was, actually. I apologize.
No, that's. I think you covered. it. Okay, so we have. We're just about at the top of the hour. So, is there any question that wasn't asked that you wish had been asked? You could go ahead and answer that, and then we'll wrap up.
Well, let's see. Question. I guess where people are at now is like, what do I do next, right? And the options you have, You could talk to other people in your company and see what's working. You could download the template. You can go through the system. What I would recommend is, going through the system, having your company pay for it, having us do it, and starting out with, it's more of an experiment than anything, and kind of have fun with it. But if you have kind of all the steps, step-by-step process to go through it, there is a process, there is a sequence, and the exciting thing is that people will absolutely respond to you, and I've been shocked at how much business I've been able to generate and who I've been able to connect with, all through email. You and I connected through email originally. It was an email about a webinar, and we connected after the fact. But it's literally so easy to connect with people if you have the right messaging and the right strategy. And and there's a whole process in finding the right companies to actually reach out to who are more predisposed to want to work with you. So that's kind of what I would, how I kind of guide people. Or you can just kind of hack at it and try to figure it out yourself. And I'd say after 3 or 4 years, you'll probably get pretty good at it.
Yeah, we here at REDBOOKS recommend the former. Definitely check out breakthroughemail.com. Bryan, thanks so much. This was a great session, and look forward to many more in the future.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really this is a great group because I feel where people are at and who they're trying to reach and all the great products that are out there. It's just a really crowded space with all the different VCs who want to fund all these different companies. But you can make it happen and stop calling on agencies. Go for the brands.
Great. Thanks so much, Bryan. Thank you all for joining, the participants on the call, and thanks for all the great questions. And we'll see you soon for the next thought.